Let me ask you something.
Have you ever sat down, opened a budgeting app, maybe watched a couple of YouTube videos about personal finance, felt genuinely motivated, told yourself this time is different, and then, 3 weeks later, found yourself back to exactly where you started? Maybe even a little worse off because now you also feel guilty about it. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know something important before we go any further. IT is not because you are bad with money. IT is not because you lack discipline, and it is definitely not because you did not try hard enough. The real reason is much more interesting than that. And once you understand it, budgeting will never feel the same way again, because here is the truth that most personal finance content completely ignores: the most popular budgeting rule in the world, the one recommended by financial advisors, taught in schools, and shared millions of times online, is built on an assumption about human behavior that is almost entirely wrong, and that assumption is costing you more than you think. Let's talk about the 50/30/20 rule. If you have spent any time learning about budgeting, you have definitely heard this one. It goes like this. Take your income, split it into 3 buckets. 50% goes to needs, 30% goes to wants, 20% goes to savings and debt.
Clean.
Simple. Logical. On paper, it is actually a beautiful system. It was popularized by Senator Elizabeth Warren back in 2005 in a book she wrote about financial security. And for decades, it has been the go-to answer whenever someone asks, "How do I start budgeting?" And here is the thing. The math works. If you actually follow it, it leads to good outcomes. So why do almost all people who try it eventually quit? Let me paint you a picture. Imagine someone, let's call him Zane. Zane is 26, works a regular office job, makes a decent income. He is not rich, but he is not struggling either. He just feels like his money disappears every month, and he has no idea where it goes. So Zane discovers the 50/30/20 rule. He gets excited. He downloads a budgeting app, connects his bank account, and starts categorizing everything.
Rent needs.
Groceries needs.
Netflix wants. Gym wants.
Coffee wants. And then Zane does the math. His needs are already at 58%. His rent alone takes up 42% of his income. He lives in a city. That is just the reality. So he is already over the needs limit, and he has not even gotten to savings yet. He adjusts. He tells himself he will cut wants down to 15% and push savings to 27% to compensate. Week 1 goes well. Week 2, there is a birthday dinner he did not plan for. Week 3, his car needs a minor repair. Week 4, he is tired and stressed, and he just orders food 3 nights in a row because cooking feels impossible right now. End of the month, Zane opens his app. He is over on wants, under on savings, exactly where he started. He closes the app, feels bad about himself, and slowly, the budgeting app moves to page 3 of his phone, where apps go to be forgotten. Sound familiar? This is not a Zane problem. This is a system problem. Here is what nobody tells you about the 50/30/20 rule. It was designed as a guideline, not a law. It was meant to give people a rough framework, a starting point. But somewhere along the way, it became treated like a universal formula that should work for everyone. And that is where things fall apart. Because the 50/30/20 rule has 3 massive blind spots. The rule assumes that 50% is enough for needs. But if you live in London, New York, Dubai, or even many mid-sized cities right now, housing alone can swallow 40 to 50% of your income before you have paid a single other bill. Add utilities, transport, food, and basic insurance, and for millions of people, needs are already at 65 or 70% before they have made a single irresponsible decision. You cannot budget your way around geography. You cannot discipline yourself into cheaper rent just by making a spreadsheet. Here's a question. Is your gym membership a want or a need? Most budgeting rules say want. It is not essential for survival, right? But if going to the gym is what keeps your mental health stable, keeps you productive at work, and stops you from stress eating or burning out, is it really optional? What about your internet? Your phone plan? The slightly better quality food that keeps you energized? The categories in the 50/30/20 rule are far too rigid for real human life. Real spending does not sort itself neatly into boxes. And every time someone tries to force it to, They end up either lying to themselves about what category something belongs to or feeling guilty for spending money on things that actually matter to them. This is where it gets really interesting. There is a concept in behavioral psychology called decision fatigue. The more decisions you have to make, the worse your decision-making gets as the day goes on. Your brain gets tired of choosing. Now think about traditional budgeting. Every single purchase requires a decision. Did I budget for this? Which category does it come from? Am I over in that category this month? Should I compensate somewhere else? It turns out that making your financial life feel like a constant series of small, stressful decisions is one of the fastest ways to make sure people eventually give up on it entirely. There is also something called the what the hell effect, which is a real psychological phenomenon studied by researchers. It works like this. You set a rule. You break the rule once. And then, instead of getting back on track, you think, well, I already messed up, so what the hell, and you go completely off track. It is the same reason people on strict diets end up binge eating after one bad meal. Rigid budgets trigger the exact same response. You go over your wants category by $20. You feel like you have failed. You stop checking the budget. And then you spend freely for the rest of the month because the damage is already done in your mind. The rule that was supposed to save you is actually psychologically designed to make you feel like a failure. So, what actually works? This is where we need to flip the entire mental model of budgeting upside down. Most budgeting systems are built on a restriction mindset. The idea is track everything, limit everything, control everything. Every dollar gets a leash. But the problem with restriction is that humans are not wired to sustain restriction forever. We resist it. We resent it. And eventually we rebel against it, the same way we do with diets, with strict schedules, with any system that feels like it is constantly telling us no. The most effective budgeting approach is not built on restriction. It is built on automation and permission. Let me explain what that means. There is a concept that some people call paying yourself first, but I want to go deeper than the bumper sticker version of that idea. Here is the core insight. Instead of trying to control every spending decision you make, you remove most of those decisions from the equation entirely. Think about it this way. When your salary arrives, what if, before you could spend a single dollar, your savings were already gone? Not because you were disciplined in that moment, but because the system moved them automatically. What if your rent, your bills, your investments, all of it happened on autopilot the moment your income came in? And what was left, whatever was sitting in your everyday account after all of that, was yours.
Completely.
No guilt. No tracking. No mental math every time you wanted a coffee. This is sometimes called the one-number approach. Instead of managing 3 or 4 or 20 budget categories, you only manage one number. The number that tells you how much you have left to spend freely. And here is why this works psychologically, where the 50/30/20 rule fails. It removes decision fatigue entirely from your daily spending. It eliminates the guilt cycle because you already did the responsible thing the moment your money arrived. And it creates what psychologists call a permission structure. Instead of every purchase feeling like you might be doing something wrong, every purchase within your free spending number feels completely legitimate. You are not trying to be disciplined every day. You were disciplined once, automatically, at the start of the month. And now you are free. There is also something profound happening here on a deeper psychological level. Most people have a complicated emotional relationship with money. Money feels like a source of anxiety, stress, guilt, and shame. Every time they check their bank account, there is a small knot in their stomach. Every purchase comes with a little voice asking, should I really be spending this? That voice is exhausting. And over time, it makes people want to avoid thinking about money altogether, which is exactly the opposite of what you need to build wealth. When you automate the responsible part, you actually start to heal that relationship. Checking your account stops being scary because you already know the important stuff is taken care of. Spending money stops feeling like a moral failure because you already did your job. Money becomes something you manage instead of something that manages you. So, let's get practical. What does this actually look like? Step 1. Figure out your actual savings target. Not what some rule says you should save, but what makes sense for your real life right now. If you have high-interest debt, your first priority is a small emergency fund, maybe 1 month of expenses, and then aggressive debt repayment. Because paying off a debt that charges you 20% interest is literally a guaranteed 20% return on your money. If you are debt-free, then start building towards saving somewhere between 15 and 25% of your income. But if that feels impossible right now, start with 5%. Genuinely, 5% is infinitely better than zero. You are building the habit, not just the number. Step 2. Automate everything important. Set up an automatic transfer the day after your salary arrives. Move your savings to a separate account, one that is not your everyday account, ideally one that takes a day or two to access, so it does not feel like pocket money. Set up automatic payments for rent, bills, and any investment contributions you make. This step feels small, but it is actually the most powerful thing you can do, because you are removing willpower from the equation entirely. And willpower is a limited, unreliable resource. Systems are not. Step 3. Know your one number. Whatever is left after your automated transfers is your spending money. Do not break it into categories. Do not track every coffee and takeaway meal. Just know the number and stay roughly within it. This is not permission to be reckless. It is permission to be human. Step 4. Review once a month, not every day. One of the biggest mistakes people make with budgeting is trying to monitor it too closely. Checking every 2 days, recategorizing expenses, feeling anxious about small fluctuations. That level of attention creates stress without creating results. Once a month, sit down for 15 to 20 minutes. Look at what came in. Look at what went out. Ask yourself one question. Is the gap between my income and my spending moving in the right direction? That is it. That is the whole review. And here is the last practical thing which most budgeting advice never talks about. Your budget should evolve. The 50/30/20 rule, or any fixed formula, treats your financial life as static. But your income changes. Your life changes. Your priorities change. The person you are at 22, renting a room and building your first emergency fund, needs a completely different financial structure than the person you are at 35 with a family, a mortgage, and investments to manage. Build a system that is designed to grow and change with you, not a rigid set of rules that makes you feel like a failure every time life happens. Budgeting, at its best, is not about controlling every dollar. It is not about saying no to everything enjoyable. It is not a test of how much willpower you have. Budgeting, at its best, is about buying yourself freedom. Freedom from anxiety. Freedom from that knot in your stomach every time you check your account. Freedom to spend without guilt on the things that genuinely matter to you, because you already took care of your future self first. The 50/30/20 rule is not evil. It is just a tool that was handed to millions of people without the instruction manual that explains why it works and, more importantly, when it does not. The deeper lesson here is not really about budgets at all. It is about understanding that financial success is not a math problem. The math is actually the easy part. The hard part is the psychology. Understanding how your brain responds to restriction, to guilt, to decision fatigue, to the story you tell yourself about money. Once you understand that, you stop fighting your own nature and start building systems that work with it. And that is when things actually start to change. So take one small step this week. Not a complete financial overhaul. Not a complicated spreadsheet. Just one automated transfer. Even if it is $20. Because the goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to build a system that keeps working even when you are tired, stressed, or just plain human. Start there. Everything else follows.